Peace everyone, Unmask Art here. Welcome back to another live critique session. Hope everyone is having a fantastic week. And I'm just going to jump right into it. Hello Cece, Cherry, Diane, Chrissy, Barbara, Claire, Dottie, Susan. Did I miss anybody? Good to see all of you lovely people. First up is Dorothy, and she submitted a couple of her projects. This first one is a pastel project. Her pastel painting is on the right. If you can't tell, the reference photo is on the left. She did a fantastic job here, and I like that she replaced the background. There's like this random box in the photo, so I like the color choice for the background. It works well. Sort of has some reddish tones in it, sort of complementing the green eyes. Also, the pink in the nose sort of looks like it belongs to the background a little bit, and that's a really good way of utilizing your color palette and sort of harmonizing your colors between the background and the foreground subject. So that was really well done. The eyes look very good. All of these nice bright spots, these nice highlights here. You captured the color of the eyes quite well as also like these green tones. Sometimes they can be tricky, and a lot of people really like to exaggerate and kind of push the colors in animal eyes and human eyes for that matter. And sometimes it can work, but I'd say more often than not, it sort of looks exaggerated, especially with like blue or green eyes. Sometimes you just see like the purest of blue, and it sort of feels a little pushed a bit too far. But in this case, I think you captured the eyes magnificently. They look really good. The colors look natural, which is, I think a really good thing, to have them looking that way. Now, that's all the good stuff about this project, which there's a lot of, because you did a fantastic job. Where you sort of pulled away from doing, I think, the best that you could is definitely the values in the white fur. White fur is infamously difficult. Oftentimes people associate white fur with the color white, and in this case I think you associated it too hard towards that pure white side of things. Because if we look at the reference photo, and I'm going to just grab a color and outline it really quick. Here's like the pure white sections. The pure white section is kind of just this little part here, sort of, and maybe a little bit on the nose, sort of like right in that area. That's kind of the pure white areas, and I can prove that by showing you the threshold graph. So if I go over here, this is pure white, by the way. This is pure white. And watch as I creep back. There's that shape. Here's the shape that I drew, right? There's that shape. And then you'll see it pop in on the nose once I get a little bit closer. Yeah, so there's the nose. That's the nose shape right here. This is the nose shape. So those are the two like absolute brightest areas of the reference photo, and you can see in comparison to your drawing, or your painting rather, you have a lot more of that white fur being closer to that pure white. And what that does is it takes away from what would otherwise be a more three-dimensional looking animal. Sorry, I'm trying to clean the layer. So in particular, if you look at the side of the face and the neck here, you get this nice brown color. And if I just isolate this color really, you can see how dark it is. But on yours, it's not nearly as dark in value. And when you sort of brighten up. We see this a lot in portraits, like human portraits, because people are afraid to go dark in skin color. And in this case, you did it on the white part of the fur because you're afraid of making the fur not appear white. But in this case, what ends up happening is the black, all the dark values and value ranges that you have between like the really dark black and the gray, like you see here in the reference, you captured that perfectly, but then you sort of dropped the ball a little bit on the white fur. And it would have been better if you had taken this color and come through with going darker where the cat has the darker white fur. And this would have made a big difference in making the cat's face look more three-dimensional. And then also this darker gray, had you brought in this color on the other parts of the fur, again, this doesn't change the fact that the fur is white to the viewer's perspective, but it does add that three-dimensional quality to those parts of the animal that sort of lack that that look, simply because you didn't go dark where you needed to on the fur. So something like that. And even though I added like this kind of greenish gray and this like peachy brown gray, you can still see, you still perceive the fur as being white, but now you have more three-dimensional qualities in your painting. The only other thing is that you could have gone a little bit darker in the values of the eyes. So I'm just going to just grab black here really quick and show you what I mean. So in particular, this part of the eye, you could have went darker, and also up here a little bit, you could have went darker there. And that just makes the eyes, again, even more three-dimensional. So here's without and here's with. You can see that it really makes the eyes more spherical and just more depth in them. It also helps those highlights pop out even more. Sometimes highlights are not they're not complemented by how bright you make the highlight or how close you get to pure white, but actually how much darker you make the colors surrounding the highlight. Other than that, this is a fantastic portrait of a cat. You did a good job. White fur is tricky, so you just got to look out for those colors sneaking in there. And now I'll move on to your second project, which is a portrait. And this one, so the last one that Dorothy submitted was pastels, and this one is colored pencil. And this is a really good portrait. Most of the drawing looks very accurate. Perhaps the way the hair comes together here is a little bit off, and also the hairline. The hairline here is a bit too smooth, where let me just grab a color really quick. I'll show you what I mean. For the most part, the drawing looks quite accurate, but I'd say with the smoothness of this hairline here, and then the way that it's uneven, you sort of changed that, which what that ends up doing is it makes her forehead look really, really round, sort of in an unnatural way. And this could be your forehead. I don't know if this is a picture of yourself. It very well could be, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't want to assume that. But yeah, it makes the forehead look unnaturally circular, which, foreheads just don't look like that. Other than that, everything else about the drawing looks accurate. Yeah, it looks fairly accurate. So that's good. I mean, I don't know if you used line art, you traced it or whatnot, but it looks good. It looks quite accurate. The hairline is not something that you generally draw. Usually you just fill in the hair. But let's see. Open mouth smile, very, very hard to do. but you did a good job on it. And the skin is very smooth, which is another difficult thing to do with colored pencils. So you did an excellent job on that. Um, Hair is tricky. I like to see these big shapes. You put in these big shapes in the hair as opposed to drawing spaghetti individual strands of hair. I like to see these dark shapes. That is a very good solid foundation for drawing accurate and realistic looking hair. These big shapes, I usually refer to them as squiggly diamonds. You've identified them quite well. I can see them in your drawing, and I can see where you got them from the reference photo. I can see exactly where you got them, and that's important. So identifying that is something that a lot of people struggle with when it comes to hair. You seem to have that down quite well. Your hair color is pretty good. The colors you chose for it, pretty accurate, considering the lighting change between this and your drawing here. The background gets a little bit darker over here, so you lose some of the detail with this low res photo, and you sort of just ignored that and readjusted the color, because here the color's not very appealing. It's kind of just gray. There's not really anything to it. So I like that you added some flavor or some color into the hair to just make it look what I imagine closer to her actual hair color, which was like a medium to dark blonde or light brown, however you want to describe it. Let's see. Let me get back to chat really quick. Sorry, I was in the zone. Oh, hey there, Angie, Tommy, Catherine. I lived in Seattle for some time. I graduated from University of Washington, so that's cool. Let's see. Helen, good to see you. Andrea, good to see you. Godbolder, good to see you. Yes, it has been a long time. I have been very good, thank you. I hope you've been good as well. Alicia. Oh, Dottie. Oh, okay. Dottie is Dorothy. Okay. Well, hello. It's a portrait of your daughter. Okay, okay. Yeah, I had a hard time imagining that someone named Dorothy would be this age. It's kind of one of those. I had a great aunt. I had a great aunt named Dorothy. It's not a name you see too much nowadays. All right, so those are all the things that I think you did really well in here. And just like I was demonstrating in the cat portrait that you did, coming back to the values and the things that people are afraid to add value to, and that is definitely the skin. So if you, again, I'll do the little analysis with the threshold. So here's we can't measure it too much, but if I pull it back to like the mid values is what you would imagine being like in the middle of the road, like that medium gray. And so what is showing up white here is everything that's in the middle and then brighter. And what you can see in your drawing here is that you have no definition on the cheekbone. You have some of the definition underneath the nose, so the shadow underneath the nose. But if you look at, it would be her right side of the face, so this part of her face. If you look at the difference, I guess I can simply draw. If you look at this part of her face, you'll notice there's no chin, or there's no cheekbone showing there. But over here, you can see that it's cutting off this part of her forehead here. It comes down to her eyebrow beside her eye. And then you can see you do have grab a different color here. You have the cast shadow from the glasses right here. And you can see that in the reference right there. And then below that is this hook for the cheek. So you get that nice shadow underneath the cheek, and this is what you're missing. You don't have that hook that it comes from the cheek and then it cuts over to the corner of the mouth. Speaking of the mouth, by the way, one thing to notice, anytime you're doing a portrait, it's the eyes are going to be generally the most important, with the exception of an open mouth smile. You can get away with not having accurate eyes if the open mouth smile is identical to the person that you're drawing. And the one of the big issues with your drawing here is that you didn't get the smile correct, which is difficult to do. So don't take it the wrong way. Open mouth smile, I've only done a few because they are very difficult to do. Teeth are a nightmare. The accuracy that you need to match the smile is like, it's very precise. And one of the things here is you'll notice, let me grab another color. With the smile, with the lips, the corner of the mouth feels like it reaches really far back. And it kind of does, where yours stops abruptly. And that silhouette really changes the face of the smile. If I just shut this off really quick, you can see that if you look right here where the corner of this mouth is and the way it reaches back, you can see that here it lifts up and it goes further back. Part of that change, by the way, is actually just because the teeth here are far too bright. So the teeth right in this area are just too bright. And that's what brings these like 6 teeth more forward, that changes the depth that the teeth have. And then the corner of the mouth also sort of comes back a little bit further. And it creates that sort of smile crease. That's what makes her smile a little bit more happy in this one. Whereas in this one, it sort of just feels like the upper lip is stretched horizontally. And then, of course, this shadow, so I'll just grab the color here to show you how dark it actually is. So that's how dark her skin is on this shadow that reaches across her face and her cheekbone. And then on your drawing, you can see that it's much lighter. It's really not that much darker than the paper. And so if you were to take this color, and I'm just going to darken it a little bit. I'm not going to grab from the reference photo. I'm going to take the same color that you have here on the paper, and then I'm just going to lightly add a little bit. This is hard to do with a mouse, so you'll have to bear with me a little bit. Maybe I can turn this down just a tad. I'll zoom out so you can't tell that I digitally added it, but here's before, here's after, and you can immediately start to see how much more three-dimensional her face is. And then if I were to come in here with the nose, you have the outline for the shadow really well. And if I just darken this shape that you've created here for me, if I just darken that a little bit, all of a sudden now her nose looks much more three-dimensional. And it really just comes down to not being afraid of the values that happen in skin. And with just that tiny change, you could take this portrait, if you wanted to make changes to it, you could grab, I don't know what color pencils that you're using, or what type. If you're using Prismacolor, You could probably get away with like 946, the number 946, or 941, something around that range, and just gradually build up the dark values of those particular shadows that you have mapped out. You have them mapped out really well. You have them drawn in, you just don't have them dark enough. If you were to go back to this drawing and darken those shadows, you would immediately see a huge improvement in your portrait. The other thing that you could do is you could take that same exact color and just lightly darken up the teeth here, right here. Just do a light layer of that brown, and then yeah, you would be really good with just that. And you could take that same brown again, take that same brown, and just make that crease come up a little bit more, and also a little bit over here. You have it drawn in, it's just not dark enough. Get those smiles just a bit closer to one another. Oops, sorry, don't mean to. Mouse is freaking out. I didn't mean to zoom in like crazy. This little part here sort of comes up just a bit, but yeah, that part of the cheek there, you can round that off, make that a little bit more rounded. Probably not that dark, but you get the idea. Just want to create more form, more three-dimensional look in the face. But I hope that helps you out. And fantastic work. Both of your submissions were really good, so thank you. Alrighty. Up next is Diane, and she did this lovely pastel project that we finished up in the art club. And yeah, it came out really cool. This was a fun little in-between project. We're currently working on we're currently working on a Thomas Kincaid pastel painting. We're recreating one of his famous paintings. Let's see, I want to try to keep up with chat. Let's see. Just joined. What do I do to keep doing art? Well, I do it for a living, so I never go outside. I don't have any friends. Nobody has my phone number, so it's very easy for me not to be interrupted. It's not the most fun to never be interrupted, but that's basically what it boils down to. Mix of Polychromos and Faber-Castell. Oh, that's right, I do remember. For Faber-Castell, for Faber-Castell, you can use 283 and 176. I have my color charts to my right if anybody's wondering why I'm looking over there. I have all the colored pencils on color charts, so I can look at what color I think you should add. Alrighty. Okay, so I don't see any other questions. If anybody has any questions, you can always do one. Is it good using tools like Photoshop? Yeah. I recommend to all of my students that they slowly learn any kind of photo editing software, whether it's free or Photoshop. I've been using Photoshop for many years, and I use it extensively in all of my art projects. I don't really do much digital stuff at all, but I use it to open up all of my reference photos, and I use it to help me color select and just shortcut everything that I possibly can. When you do art for a living, it becomes a lot less about like sketching a million times until you get your final result, and more about finding every possible shortcut you can, because art takes a lot of time. the stuff that takes uh, the stuff that takes up unnecessary time are the stuff that there's a million shortcuts out there for, and I use as many as I can. I use as many shortcuts as I can to make the workflow as fast and as efficient as possible. And Photoshop is something that um, I highly recommend if you're looking to produce artwork, like finished artwork. There's difference between, like, I have a sketchbook and I like to draw stuff, and producing finished artwork like on a weekly basis. You need to develop a workflow, because if you're ever going to go into a professional direction with art, whether it's creating your own original art and selling it, or if you get into teaching like I do, or if you get into more digital stuff, or whatever, it really doesn't matter what profession you branch off into with artwork. It's important to develop a workflow that works for you, and find ways to cut down on time. Because if you ever end up working for somebody other than yourself doing artwork, then you need every shortcut in the book. Photoshop has provided me with just an endless supply of shortcuts. So anyways, back to Diane's pastel painting here. Sorry, got sidetracked there. This one came out really well. Diane, correct me if I'm wrong, but you did this one a little bit smaller than I did, correct? Um, I'm pretty sure I remember that, which is probably why I should be looking at it like at this scale on my monitor, because right now I'm kind of zoomed in, and I can sort of see the width of the pencil strokes. So right now I can tell that this one was a bit smaller than what I did mine at, because mine's can't remember what mine's at. I think mine's like 15 by 24 or something like that, 18 by 24. The colors are good. The texture in the table is good. You probably could have, well, depending on the size. Okay, yeah, you confirmed it is a little bit smaller. So no, I think the texture on the table is good considering the size. It's very obvious wood grain. You got some of the swirls in there to get the to like the knotting in the wood. The biggest issue that I have with the texture in the table is that you deviated just a tiny bit, just a tiny bit. I'll grab a brush here really quick and show you. The general direction of this wood grain is going this way, and even though it shifts a little bit, it's not perfectly straight. It's wood grain after all. It curves and stuff. That's the general direction, because I can see the pencil strokes. And that's really good. You have that nice wood grain direction. The only problem is that down here in the corner, it's just a bit more vertical. And so you can see that these lines, if I follow them out, they don't intersect properly. That's not the straightest line in the world. Hold on, let me do that again. So here to like here-ish, yeah. So here's the intersection. Those lines don't meet up perfectly even, and it stands out just a little bit because I have to nitpick. Your art. You used washed off pastel matte. I can't even tell. It looks so good. Yeah, it looks really, really good. Yeah, I'm gonna have to try that eventually. But I don't have any projects that I want to wash off. That's the thing. I would just like messy up a piece of pastel matte and then wash it off. Yeah. So that's the only thing with the table. Those lines don't quite match up. Other than that, uh, tablecloth the tablecloth looks good. When you're working at a smaller size, it is harder to get any definable texture. And so I can see some of it. I can see some of the texture that you put in, and that looks pretty good. These folds here are they're sort of they're sort of like a almost a focal point of the tablecloth, and some of these lines don't quite translate into the folds that the tablecloth is making. And I think that if you had that darker color and you just kind of came in and defined your edges just a tiny bit more in some of these folds, these sort of complex folds, those defined lines will help translate what's happening to the tablecloth in this area. So only really that part with the tablecloth. If you could just define those lines a little. Whoa, sorry, mouse went crazy there. Defining those lines is going to help increase the understanding for the viewer as to what is going on here. Because right now, you can tell like the tablecloth is bunched up, but you can't quite tell how it's folding. There's just sort of these highlights coming through, and the shadows aren't really giving us enough information. But that's about it. The flower looks good. It's bright. It's got the directional texture. It's got a little bit of the yellow and green and stuff. So the flower looks good. The water pitcher looks good. Again, I think that you can maybe push the value just a tad. I like this value here. I feel like that could be even darker. Let me forget how to change this. Whatever. I'll just grab a slightly darker color. I feel like you could have maybe gone a touch darker around this edge here. And then also, I know if I'm remembering, I guess I can look at mine. Yeah. So there's the, that is way too dark. Let me just lighten that up a little bit. Oh, I forget the technical term. It's the part of the shadow that is the darkest on a cylindrical or spherical object, like the pinch shadow, because here from the right, this is the primary light source, and then you have the bounce light coming from this side, and that creates the darkest point through here. So this is the darkest part of the shadow, because you have light on either side, and that's the spot. That's the one spot that's being hit by the lowest amount of light, and you sort of miss that. So see, this should be the darker area, where because of the value of this orange that you have here, it looks like the backside is darker, and what you needed was just that line essentially. That line there to create that pinch shadow, and then also a little bit darker up here around the rim, right around that area. Let me just grab a color. So like right in here was just a little bit darker, and then also on the handle you get another pinch shadow right through here. That's another pinch shadow. And then other than that, considering the size, maybe a little bit more gentleness in the yellow part to smooth it out. Yeah, I don't know if there's such a thing as a mini tutorial for lighting. Lighting is I don't even know where to begin with it actually. I still have your list of mini tutorials that you sent me to do, and lighting. I've thought about that one quite a bit. It's maybe I can do a bit more of a discussion on identifying light sources and like technical terms or something like that. Maybe that will be helpful. But yeah, those few things with the water pitcher, and yeah, this project came out perfect. Well done. And then Diane's next project is one that we just finished up yesterday. I don't know. I was going to use the other picture, Diane, because I feel like this one became a little bit more, a little less of what your actual drawing looks like, because it kind of ripped out all the yellows. Um, Actually, maybe I can just add some yellows back into this. I don't want to go back to, I don't want to have to try to go back to the other one. I feel like when you white balanced it, it overcompensated because it also, yeah, it sort of like ripped out all the yellows. You know, I'm gonna try. Let me hold on a second. I need to get the other photo that you posted of this project, because this one is should have looked at it closer. This one's a little bit too changed digitally. The camera or the setting or whatever. Yeah, this one is much better. Yeah, this one I feel is much closer to reality. Even considering the paper is a bit yellow, I can change that. But now you can see the yellows a little bit, the oranges and the headlights and stuff. It looks better. And I'll just pull out a tad of the yellow like that. Yeah, there we go. That's better. That's much better than this one, because this one destroys the contrast. Takes out way too much. Like, you can't see the texture of the paper at all. In this one, you can actually see the texture of the paper. Yeah, this one's better. And yeah, you did really good on this. Let me just sort of redigest the photo a little bit. Well done on the values. You know, you captured like the grungy worn outness of the paint. I really like the way that you did this sort of jagged metal around the headlight here. The way that you did this actually looks like the fender was like pushed in and the headlight is sort of sticking out. Kind of funny. It looks really good. It looks really good. There's a few areas here on the paint where that maybe the colored pencil texture is not working. You can kind of see the pencil grain a little bit more in like this area, and I feel like maybe this area that doesn't service well. I'm being nitpicky because you otherwise did perfect, and so if I have nothing to say, then if you did perfect, then I have nothing to say, which I'll try to avoid doing. The headliner, yeah, the headliner, the rear view mirror, and these sort of separation bits, they could be darker. If you made them darker, remember when I added the sort of the highlight that runs through the windshield and kind of made it look like glass out of nowhere? If you had the areas around that darker, then that highlight that runs through, that sort of wiggly highlight that runs through the windshield, would just be a little bit more prominent. I noticed that you made the mirror, the side mirror, instead of reflecting the yellow orange buildings, you sort of removed that color from the image, so it doesn't have that. It doesn't have that color happening anywhere throughout the car, even the building that was reflective on this fender. You sort of changed the color dynamic. And since you removed that aspect of the mirror, I don't know if you were aiming for the mirror to be made out of the metal and painted the same color of the car, or if you wanted to still keep a chrome mirror. But the shadows, so if the way the shadows and the reflections would have worked on this mirror, regardless of which color you wanted it to be, it would have still had a different color than the car, because just like how this fender was reflecting the building that was off to the right, the mirror was also reflecting that building. And so if you wanted to replace that color, it kind of looks like you replaced it with like a red purple. You would have seen that in the mirror as well. So by removing those building reflections, which I like the choice to do that. I think you needed to go with something a bit more obviously different than the color of the paint. Whether you chose like a more obvious purple, you have kind of this grape purple here, which I like a lot. So if you would have went towards the purple side of things, the way the light would have bent and all of that, you could have pushed those colors a bit further to make it obvious that it's reflecting something other than the car. You know what I mean? Those colors don't quite read as uh, as a reflection of something else. It sort of just reads as being the color. And that's why on the bumper, I don't feel like the bumper has that chrome reflective property because you've removed the colors of the world around the car. Um, it still has the nice chrome look to it. It still looks like the reflective chrome, but it sort of just feels like it's missing a color. You know what I mean? Because you didn't add a replacement for the color that you removed. You sort of you just removed it and replaced it with the same color of the car, which sort of makes you feel like the car is reflecting itself in some way. But because of the color of the car, it just doesn't feel like it's reflecting. You know what I mean? Hopefully that made sense. Hopefully that made sense. It still came out really, really good, and I like that you took the uh, the creative choice to remove those almost random colors from your project to just make it your own. But I think that you could have pushed that color much further and come out with something uh, even more unique. So maybe if I went like super crazy purple, and I'll just throw it into the fender here. And I remember these parts here were distinctly orange. If you went with something like that, it sort of feels obviously different from the car. And had this color shown up in other spots, it would have made even more sense in context that something around this car is really purple. If you wanted to go with something really different, otherwise, you did a fantastic job on the project. I just got a nitpick. All right, up next is Stuardo, and he has this beautiful rose. This was a colored pencil project, and I felt like you did a fantastic job on this, by the way. Um, I would say the only two improvements that I would recommend. It looks like you hand drew the edge. You can use masking tape with colored pencils as well and get nice clean edges. Those clean edges are just going to polish the overall drawing. So that's something I can sort of artificially do really quick. I'll just give you nice clean polished edges by using the paper color. So those clean edges they're a small detail, but small details are what make up big differences. So let me just do that for you really quick. So you can use masking tape, any like low tack painter's tape. Those clean edges just going to make it nice and polished. And continuing on with sharp lines, the edges of the rose itself. So I'm just going to grab this really nice black that you created. I'm just going to work around the edges. And I'm just going to clean them up a tiny bit. There's not a lot of spots where it feels a little faded or foggy or feathery around the edges, but there's a few little tiny spots where if you just take your black pencil and you just clean up that edge a little bit, it's just going to make your rose sharper against this very stark background, and it's just going to make it look better. Again, it's all about like the tiny polishing, not changing any of your colors or anything like that, just a nice little sharp edge. Same thing with the leaves, just very, very small. And this is the difference. It's just the polish, the nice sharp edges. The other thing that you can do is to create more volume within your rose. Yeah, I'm just going to take your color here. And I think what I'll do, I'll desaturate it a little bit. So I'm going to pull the color towards the gray, and then I'm just going to darken it. So I don't want the colors that you have right now are very, very vibrant. They're super vibrant. So now you need to balance those out with some less vibrant and darker colors. And by adding some of those darker colors to, say, the underside of this rose, I'm going to go even darker. My bad. Let's go even darker. So a little bit there and a little bit down here. And then maybe not that much there, but a little bit right in here, just to separate the layers of petals. I just want to separate the layers of petals. I'm just sort of creating arbitrary shadows here. But now you can start to see how those layers are on top of each other as opposed to just almost two-dimensionally on the same level. And by creating a little bit of form and layer within the petals, it gives the rose a bit more depth. And so here's before. You can see that the separation, like this little lip of the petal curling out, you don't really feel like that lip is curling out. It just sort of feels like this two-dimensional shape. As soon as you start introducing a little bit more range and value and form to the rose, all of a sudden, okay, now those petals feel like they're curling out from the rose. Even if the reference photo, and this is notorious with reference photos of flowers, especially like something like this, the photographer would have lit this rose up like a light bulb with like several different lights in order to create this studio photo of this rose without any shadows on it. And those types of photos make the least interesting pieces of art, because when you're creating a drawing, dynamic shadows are just so much more interesting to look at. And you have the nice contrast between the background and the rose, which makes the rose stand out really well. But now you need to create some dynamic within the rose itself, so that you imagine if you replaced the black background with just a plain white background or plain white paper, the rose would still look interesting. So I think that if you did that, if it still looked like this and the back of the background was just the plain white paper, the rose would not look as interesting as it does with the black background, simply because of the contrast levels. So adding a little bit of form to your rose is going to go a long way. And that goes with any flower, by the way, not just this one, not just roses. All right, so here's the before. First thing, just clean up your edges a little bit and you're going to be, looking really, really clean. And then just some dynamic range to your shadows. Alrighty. Up next is Susan. She has this lovely graphite portrait. Some of you might recognize this portrait. There was a few of these submitted. This is also one of the many art club projects that we did like a month and a half ago or so, or however long. It was like a month. I can't ever remember. So many projects this year. Um, this was one of the few graphite projects that are in the art club, and I don't know which size. Sometimes it's hard for me to determine what size you guys draw your projects at. Based on like this line and this line, I'd say it's pretty small, probably about the same size as my drawing, if not smaller. Some of these lines are still pretty thick for pencils. So yeah, I'd say it might even be a little bit smaller than I drew mine, which tells me that, the head is also smaller. So that's something to take into account for all those viewing this project right now. Is there's not a lot of space when you're drawing a face that's only the size of your thumb, which this project is probably fairly close to on the face size. Okay, I'm not mistaken. Yeah. He did have legs all the way down to his feet. I was like, why does it feel like something's missing? And then I realized you didn't draw beneath the shorts, right? I didn't crop this. I didn't crop this, did I? I don't remember seeing his feet, Susan. Did you draw his feet? I don't think you did. Um, anyways, let me talk about that first. As soon as you confirm that no feet have been cropped off, suppose I could maybe check on Facebook, but no, I definitely did not crop his feet off. So anytime you crop a person, animal, anything, you have to be very cautious as to where you crop. Um, I've slightly discussed avoiding tangents in your artwork. The tangents just don't work in artwork. It's very, very strange. And one of those tangents occurs in cropping. So, very awkward place to crop is where things end. Anything where stuff ends, you don't want to crop there. So, for instance, a joint, like if I were to crop at my shoulders, it feels strangely odd when you see a portrait and then it's just kind of stopped at their shoulder line. Or imagine a portrait where it stops where the neck connects to the body. It would feel like the neck is just going on forever. That's what cropping does. It feels like it's kind of goes on forever. Where you cropped his shorts, I'm not I'm not going crazy, am I? I didn't crop this, right? I didn't crop this. I'm not going nuts, right? What I would have recommended is cropping him uh, in between his femur bone here, because now you're like, meh, I don't know if he has pants on. I don't know if he has shorts on, but it doesn't matter and it doesn't bother anybody. With this crop, there's something happening to his shorts. He has shorts, first off, and it just disconnects. It creates uncertainty to. Uh, it just creates uncertainty to the viewer that can sometimes be uneasing, like cropping at the elbows, cropping at the wrist, cropping exactly at the waist. Anything where something ends, you want to avoid cropping at those locations. That's a general rule, but a very safe one to follow. Um, so I'm going to first just fix that for all the viewers, and now it just feels a little bit more complete in this way. Uh, Other than that, good values. You got good structure in um, the sweater. I think with the pants, the pants, you sort of changed the material feel of the pants. The pants were like jean shorts, and these highlights that you created here are just a little bit um, too well defined. When dealing with graphite drawing or anything that's monochromatic, when it comes to material, the contrast and sharpness of highlights in the material is what creates the illusion of the material. And in this case, the shorts are a little bit too plastic like, in the sense that the highlights are, they're pretty well defined and they're pretty sharp around the edges. So as material gets softer and softer, highlights become much more diffused. They have soft edges. They sort of just gradually change into the other values. And in this case, your highlights are just a little bit too cut out and a little bit too bright in comparison to the neighboring values, and it sort of makes them a bit less denim and a bit more leather. So you have to be careful with those changes in values on material. Um, I'm just looking at mine. Um, I have my drawing of this same portrait up on my wall because I'm way too lazy to put all of my artwork in my drawer. Actually, I have like no room. I basically have no room left in my drawer for any more artwork. Eventually, I'm just gonna have all of my walls covered with my artwork taped up, because I have no space. In the amount of projects that we've done this year, it's piling up like crazy. Um, yeah. Other than that, the teeth were really hard in this project, and I know that you're working quite small, so yeah, you got to be careful with the teeth. They could probably be a little bit smaller. You have some of those the vertical lines, the gaps in the teeth. They're a bit too wide, so each tooth kind of looks like it's separated a bit much. The best way to avoid that is to, uh, if the drawing is too small, to accurately draw the width of a gap, just don't do it at all. That's my general rule. I don't even think on my portrait, I don't even remember if I drew any gaps in his teeth at all. I just drew sort of like this, just this white shield, almost like cartoon version, and then darkened it a little bit so they weren't too bright. Um, Other than that, you could try to soften his skin a little bit. Just take your paper blender, go over it a little bit more. Anytime you use those paper blending stumps to blend graphite, they are lifting graphite off of the paper, so things get lighter. So you can use that to um, sort of soften and add the gradient to his skin a bit more to make his skin feel like a more uh, continuous color, as opposed to a little bit blotchy. It looks a little blotchy the way that it is here. And then you can use your kneaded eraser to dab up the highlights where you need them. And that's going to make his face look, the face color and the skin color look a little bit more continuous. Yeah, this was a hard project. It was a teeny tiny little face for a portrait. It was more about the full figure kind of thing, and dealing with different material. Like he had like the satin or the what's that, silk bow tie, so that was, had those shiny aspects. The soft cotton sweater or a cardigan. And so dealing with different materials than the denim shorts. So yeah, it was a tough project to do, but I think that you did a good job on it. Up next, still Susan. Yeah, Susan, your pastel Howl's Moving Castle project. This came out fantastic. I was looking forward to seeing your version of this, Susan, because you have a very particular art style that I love. It feels very loose and natural. I'm trying to remember, trying to think of who it reminds me of. It sort of feels like if Monet took on realism. That's what your art style reminds me of, and I really like it. I still, to this day, remember your butter and toast, the squirrel and chipmunk project. I don't think I'll ever forget that project because I just loved your squirrel so much. And so I was looking forward to seeing your style and how you took on this project, and I'm not disappointed. I really like your sky. You changed the sky quite a bit from the reference photo. You have different cloud coverage, and you have some of these. It feels a little bit like a sunset coming off from the left side with the pink and yellow. A little what the colors that I used in the sky for the clouds themselves. Um, and then your grass is quite a bit different. My grass had a more horizontal feel to it because I was trying to emulate that animated but painted look in the reference from the still frame of the movie, where yours doesn't have a direction. Yours doesn't have a horizontal or vertical direction. It kind of has like a planted direction. I don't know. I don't even know how you accomplish this with your grass, but um, I have the sensation of the light coming down and these sort of long cast shadows with holes of light coming through trees. So I really like the way that you did your grass. You instead of the blades of grass that I put in to make it look animated, you have these little bushels of grass. So slightly different approach there. I think it came out really good. I like the way that you made these flowers. Um, and then, of course, the castle itself, you did a really good job. It's interesting to see this in your style. You have a tendency to outline things a little bit too heavily. And I can see this in the castle itself, which isn't, it's not a bad thing. I think it's sort of your style. If you wanted to, if you wanted to go closer to realism, you have to be careful with obvious outlines. In particular, like if the leg here, you can see this black outline. You can see the black outline over here on this leg as well. You can see a lot of the black outlines throughout the edges of the castle, separating it from the background. That's all fine if you want to continue with this particular look, which, like I said, I really enjoy your style and everything. So it's not something you need to change, but if you want to go more realism, you need less outlines. Um, and the other thing was the outline on the top of the mountains. You sort of have like this bluish, grayish color for the outline on the top of the mountains to help separate it from the sky. And again, more realism just means less outlines. You have to let the colors separate themselves simply with their value in color, and and try not to add those extra outlines. Um, I would say I when I was looking at it, I couldn't tell if you used ink. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like you used the pastel pencils for the outlines on the characters, um, which is impressive because some of these lines are really small. But maybe no, maybe there is ink there. Yeah, it sort of looks like there's ink there, but then I can't tell what this outline is because it looks like you. Yeah, it looks like you inked it and then you outlined it with pencil as well. Hard to say. Hard to say. But I would do one or the other. I would do one or the other. Either use the ink and don't outline it with the pencil, or just outline it with the pencil. Because the characters didn't quite come out as clean uh, as I think that you hoped for. But again, the characters still fit within your sort of overall look. So there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Um, Trying to think of, I think maybe, hmm, yeah, I don't know. I can't really think of anything other than the outlining. Some of the outlining you could potentially consider changing, but again, you don't need to. You have one of the most difficult styles to critique. In this, if you were to just paint stuff like this, I would have nothing to critique. So you're doing a fantastic job. Whatever your art goal is, like whether you want to do more realistic stuff or not, um, I think that your work looks fantastic just the way that it is. So just keep that in mind. Alrighty, up next is Angela. She has this lovely pastel piece, and this is a relatively simple project, so I probably won't have to spend too much time on it. I think first off, the same things that I talked about with whose project was it? Studardo's rose. I can simply apply to this as well. The first thing, um, you wanted to create this sensation of light coming through the flower. First off, cover the background. I don't know if you use the dark color of pastel mat or not, but you could use the black Carbothello pencil to get even darker, get a very, very dark background, and you can use that pencil to crispy your edges. Your edges look good though. Your edges around the flower look really, really good. It almost looks like you used a pencil to do that. I can't tell if you used a pencil or not, or this is the original color of the pastel mat. Based on the shade of the green here, it looks like you are working on the dark color of pastel mat, because I can see the dark color coming through the green that you applied here. Speaking of which, the green just isn't dark enough down at the bottom. So you see how dark this green is. If I just darken that green, it immediately looks better. Um, so the value on this bottom part of the stem, very, very important, because you want this edge light here that this highlight, you want that to be like as thin as you can get. And if you use that light green on the edge and then you use your darker green to like creep up to it and make it really thin, that's how you get that thin line. That's going to help make the light source on this stem more obvious. And then the use of colors throughout the flower look really, really good. These colors are super cool. These are really cool colors. One of the colors that you sort of missed is this bright orange. Now the Carbothellos, they don't really have this bright orange of a color. There's a few colors that are, they're kind of close, but they're not going to be that vibrant. A lot of these colors are neon. And the thing with neon colors is that you can't mix neon. There is a bright pink. I'm trying to remember the number. I don't have my numbers written on my Carbothello palette, so I can't give you the number. I want to say like 936, but I'm just making that up. So these oranges, these pinks, even like this green here, there is a pretty close to a green neon, or maybe like this yellow. That's not the right color. There we go. These three colors, maybe the yellow, you can mix that. That's not very neon. But this orange and this fuchsia color, you can't mix. You can't mix them. So you have to. And I'm going to just darken some of the. Whoa, that's not what I wanted. Darken some of the areas of the flower. It's way too dark. So like this area here where this shadow is, this little side over here, the top part, if I darken this, and I'm using black to demonstrate this because I want to show you that even if you don't have the neon colors, if you capture the values properly, you're going to get a lot closer to the effect that you were aiming for. And so even though the colors aren't as vibrant and intense as the reference photo, you get closer to the actual values that you need, then all of a sudden the flower looks like it's being hit by the light and the light is shining through. I'm trying to think of what that term is, where the light comes through the object and, you know, it like paints, like when it shines through like your ear or when you put a flashlight up to your hand. Can't remember the name of it, but yeah. So it's much more about the values as opposed to the saturation of colors. Okay, used colored paper and pan and pastels and pencils. Okay, yeah. Let's see. The other thing is the pure white. Yeah, the pure white. You want to, of course, try to get that little section right here. Bring that out. Bring this out. Bring this out here. And the edging around the flower. That's another thing that's going to help you a lot with creating that effect. Because if I turn this image black and white, no, that is not how I do it. If I turn this image black and white, you can still get a little bit of the sensation of light source. And on yours, you cannot. That's a quick way to test your artwork. Before calling it done, you can always just take a photo of it, turn it black and white, and ask yourself, what's the light source? And if you can't see the light source in your drawing, painting, artwork when it's black and white, then neither can the viewer. So you wanna do that. Alrighty, last but not least is Barbara. This is an oldie but a goodie. I did a live color pencil tutorial drawing this exact rose. I've seen this rose drawn way too many times by various other artists and stuff on YouTube and Instagram and stuff. This rose has been this is probably the most famous rose that people draw. I swear, I've seen it drawn a lot. It's because it's like the only good picture of a single isolated bloomed rose on the internet or something. I don't even understand how that's possible. No, you can't take. So just to be clear about mixing neon colors, if you don't have neon colors, you can't use any combination of colors to create neon colors. So you have to have a neon color in order to mix other variations of neon colors. It's not possible. So if fluorescent yellow sounds like a neon yellow. So in the if I look at the color range, I have the color range of all of my pastel pencils on my wall next to me. You can't see them, but I can. Neon doesn't exist in any of these colors. And so I know that no matter what I do with any of these colors, I will never get neon. Because neon is in color form, like in real life, not talking about digitally. Neon is a particular pigment that must be in the color. Like it's not something that can be mixed. Like you can take yellow and blue and create many different shades of green, but no matter what non-neon yellow and non-neon blue you have, you'll never be able to mix those two together to get neon green because the intensity of neon is as high as it goes. Like as the color saturation reaches, like um, if you let me turn off my webcam really quick so you can see my color chart. So if you look at the colors over here, like I can move this around, and if your colors only exist within this realm, like in the center part here, you'll never be able to reach this corner. And in this corner, the highest intensity, pure saturation of color, that's where neon exists. And so if I scrub through the hue range here, I got this neon green. I got neon green. I got neon yellow, neon orange, neon red. Neon red is kind of just pure red, but like fuchsia, all these neon colors. And you can, if the color range of most paint, like most standard paint, colored pencils, the only neon colors that exist in that I have for my colored pencils exists in Prismacolor, and there's two of them. You could argue maybe three or four. Okay, there's five neon colors in Prismacolor. I'm not going to go over five. And in the other sets, they don't exist. The other sets don't have neon colors. And so that range only exists within this small window here. And so no matter which ones I mix together, I will never reach this upper right corner, theoretically. So anyways, so what did I do? All right. So back to Barbara's project here. I would say, given that I am a bit too familiar with this rose, you did a good job on it as far as the execution of completing this project. There's the nice texture, nice velvety texture that you went. I can see that you followed the textural lines of each petal, which is really good. I think the only thing that I would adjust or try to adjust in this project is the softness. If you could, maybe I can artificially make it softer so I can show you what I mean. If I just go down here and remove the texture. So here is the rose like extra soft, and it sort of has that velvety look, and here's the rose as it is. And the only thing that's going to help you get closer to this as opposed to this is more layers and less distinguishing between the values. So sort of just blurring it out without changing the structure, keeping the sharp edges. The thing with flowers that I see often is outlining the petals. So some of these outlines are a little bit too distinct. Same thing that I was sort of talking about with Susan's project. When you create the outlines, you get further away from realism. So try to, instead of outlining the petal, work your way up to that edge and then stop with whatever color is supposed to be there. I know that for this particular rose, a lot of that curvature of the petals, it sort of feels like it ends with a line because it goes from like a bright to like a really dark or vice versa. But you want to try to not make those lines by drawing them. You want to try to make those lines by filling in the shapes as opposed to drawing an actual outline. Because I can see like this outline here, right here it feels a little natural, but here it doesn't feel as natural. Here it feels like a line. Same thing with this petal. This one feels a little bit like a line as well. But other than that, I think that it came out quite well. You could maybe, I forget which colors I used in the tutorial of this project, but I think you could probably spice it up a little bit with, I don't know, maybe like a more bluish color in the shadows. If I just take some kind of arbitrary blue here and maybe just spice up the shadows a little bit so that they're not so bland, in the sense that it's like the brownish red. Maybe I could do blue or go more purple, blue, whatever suits your fancy. Bluish purple shadows to sort of change the dynamics of the color. That's something that revisiting this rose I probably would consider. This rose was pretty hard to draw, though. I remember that. Did something happen? I didn't like says that I've been live for 12 minutes. I hope the stream didn't like strangely end for no reason. One of your very first projects? Oh, okay. That was some time ago. You reached real far back. Um, anyways, that is the final project. So thank you all very much for your submissions. I really appreciate it. For anybody else that you didn't get your submission in, or if you are interested in submitting your artwork, I have a link for the Facebook group in the description. Just join the Facebook group. I do these critiques the first Friday of every month. So, just look out for the post. I always post in the group like a few days before the live stream, and then you just post your work in the comments there, and then you'll see your artwork. Otherwise, yeah, that's going to be it. So hope you enjoyed it. Hope you had fun, and hope you learned something that's most important. And you guys have a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.